How's it going, crew? This is Happy Days and welcome to another Terraria Top 5. In today's episode we're going to be looking at my personal Top 5 most powerful weapons in the Terraria 1.3 update. We're going to be doing some damage tests and showing which situations I feel each weapon excels in and why. To keep things fair today, I'm using the same accessories for all 5 tests, and they're fairly standard accessories that most players would maybe have 1, 2 or all of them, and all re-rolled with the menacing modifier to make sure that all weapons have the same damage output. For each test, if I'm using a magic weapon, I'll be wearing nebula armor. Melee weapon will be using the solar set, just to make sure that each weapon is getting its maximum possible buffs, but that's as far as I'm modifying for each weapon test. So let's get started. Coming in at number 5 on the list is a weapon that I've seen used quite a lot, and a lot of players have been talking about it, and it is the Stardust Dragon Staff, which is forged using Stardust fragments. The reason I love it is, even if you're not playing a strict summoner character, so say you're playing a melee, it's still an awesome weapon to use. So with things like the new Bewitching table, just drinking a summoning potion and maybe swapping in one summoning item, you're actually able to summon quite a decent summon. Coming in at number 4 on the list is a weapon that's seen quite a few nerfs since the 1.3 update, and that is the Phantasm, crafted with Vortex fragments. So make sure you've got your Vortex armor on, and to get the most out of the weapon, if you can manage to do it, double tap down to get the added bonus of the Vortex armor set. Now when you fire it, and I'm using Luminite arrows for this, you can get quite decent DPS versus a group. You can see it's just over 30,000. However, this is very much a boss weapon for me personally, because it has a very slow wind up. So I think it's important to also test it against a single target. For example, if you're using this against the Moonlord, remember that the Moonlord's eyes and core are only one target. So when shooting it against a single target and allowing it to build up to full speed, and with the Vortex buff on, you can see it's doing quite a respectable 7,000-8,000 damage per second, which is quite nice. For me, the Phantasm is a weapon that's at its best when you can allow the enemies to just stay in its line of fire. So for example, here I am in an arena I normally use for Pumpkin Moon and Frost Moon and things like that, and you can see that the concentrated damage from the Phantasm is just shredding the enemies to pieces. Coming in at number 3 is a weapon that's actually been in Terraria since 1.2, but has been officially released in this version, and that is the SDMG, the Space Dolphin Machine Gun. This weapon has a beastly damage output, and I'm currently using it with Luminite bullets. And as you can see, with full Vortex gear on and damage modifiers, you are able to get quite a lot of DPS versus groups. Now, another thing to test this against, if you're going to use it against a boss, however, against a single target, it does a much more modest 7,000 to 8,000 damage. However, one thing, and the reason it's at number 3 on my list, is I prefer to use chlorophyte bullets with it and use it more as the ultimate crowd control gun. And I'll show you what I mean right now. For me, the SDMG really tends to shine when you're confronted with heaps of lesser mobs, or I know the pillars don't really seem like lesser mobs, but when you couple it with the chlorophyte bullets, it gives you the ability just to rapidly move around the battlefield, avoiding most of the damage. This is especially important in expert mode, and I recently found the benefits of staying really mobile and using a high rapid fire gun like SDMG or Vortex Beater if you don't have it yet, paired with chlorophyte bullets, really helps you get through these events nice and easily. And that's why it's number 3 on my list, ultimate crowd control weapon. Number 2 on my list is a melee weapon, and it's one of our first ones for the list. And it's the Solar Eruption, which, surprisingly enough, is not, you don't need to beat the Moonlord to get this. It only requires solar fragments. And as you can see, it is a flail type weapon that does massive damage to groups. Now, the key component of this weapon, and it's why it's number 2 on my list, and you can see it here, it actually passes through blocks. and that opens up some key strategies when you're fighting bosses and making special arenas for it. If you're wondering why other melee weapons haven't been chosen, have a quick look at the honourable mentions at the end, and I'll explain why the Solar Eruption was chosen over this. The main reason I love the Solar Eruption is that it doesn't matter where you are or what you're doing, you don't have to slow down. It freely attacks through blocks, it has a super high damage, it lights up areas, and unlike a lot of the other weapons, yeah, you can just leave it on auto fire, you don't have to worry about ammo, you don't have to worry about where you're standing, you just keep your mouse cursor over whatever you're fighting, and the Solar Eruption pretty much does the job for you. And that's why this is number 2 on my list. Super useful, all-purpose weapon that just does the job no matter where you are in your Terraria world. Okay, so we're up to number 1 in my top 5 weapons from Terraria 1.3 update. And it's an item that I think has a lot of untapped potential. So all the weapons I've shown pretty much are as strong as they're going to be, considering you've got the right armor on and things like that. However, my number 1 weapon is the last Prism, and I'm sure you've all had a play with it before, and it's the sort of weapon that dishes out insane amounts of damage if you let it charge up to its maximum level. You can see it was just doing over 90,000 DPS with about 12, 13 mannequins. I'm also using a mana flower to allow it to fire continuously, which is part of the secret to getting the maximum damage out of this. Now, one thing I've been playing around with, and this is why it's number 1 on my list, guys, is that the nebula armor actually spawns nebulas. And if you play around using statue mobs, you can spawn an infinite number of nebulas. So the cool thing about this, guys, is that the damage from the last Prism, you don't even need to stop casting the last Prism because the mana regen is sufficient. Which is kind of cool. So let's just get that last eye out and then focus on the core underneath, and that's pretty much it. So nice and quick. And we'll turn the crab statue off. Boom. Okay, time to have a quick chat about some honourable mentions. Okay, so I'm going to do these 3 at once. I really wanted to include the Terrarian, Meowmare and Starwrath, but they all fall into the similar boat. So they do reasonable damage versus the single mannequin. They're all ballpark, except for the Starwrath, which requires an open roof for the stars to hit it. My issue is that all 3 weapons don't fire through walls, which is the supreme benefit that the Solar Eruption has. So considering that the Solar Eruption is easier to acquire and does comparable damage, plus it has such a massive range, is the reason why I've picked that over these 3 melee weapons. Just quickly too, on another note, the Miss Lunar Flare was something I wanted to include, because when you cast it on groups of mannequins, it looks like it's a really highly damaging weapon. However, when you cast it against a single mannequin and just a small little cast, you'll see that, and I've got nebula armor on, you'll see that each cast actually does quite low damage, with some of the numbers being under 200. Now, against strong bosses, like the Moonlord's Core for example, has 70 armor, so that means that each of these little attacks is having 70 damage taken off them. So while it looks impressive when you smash this for thousands and thousands of damage, that's built up of lots of little attacks, which gets diminished quite quickly versus stronger bosses. Okay, so to recap, we have in number 5 the Stardust Dragon Staff, in number 4 the Phantasm, number 3 is the SDMG, number 2 the Solar Eruption, and in number 1 place the last Prism, with its potential to destroy pretty much everything in the game with the awesome arena setup. Guys, I really hope you enjoyed this video, and remember, it's just my personal opinion, and I welcome you in the comments. If you want to list your number 1 to 5, then feel free to. And I really think it's awesome when guys and girls add reasons to their choices as well. I think that makes it a bit more meaningful. Alright, keep those comments coming about what you'd like to see a top 5 done of next. And if you haven't subscribed yet, click that little HD icon in the bottom right corner. You won't be disappointed. If you're interested to learn about the last Prism trick I was doing in this video, there's a link in the description. And here's the most important part, everyone. Until next time, you all stay happy, and I'll see you soon. This is Happy Days signing out. See ya! And that means that Ectoplasm will be, getting farmed nicely. And you can see that was dead easy to set up that. So the mobs can cruise up the sides, the mimics can get in, which is one of the main things. Yeah, we've got lots of good loot. Oh, he's got 3,000 health! He's only got 3,000!